Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Wednesday session here at Namaste Village. Excuse the orange that seems to surround me. I don't know if this is a sign that something has changed or just the camera is preferring orange. Whatever it is, we remember that nothing true can ever change, right? Enlightenment is not a change at all. It's the realization of that which cannot change. So we may talk about that today, but I want to begin by looking at a little history, something that you may know, you may not know, but I think it's very fascinating. And just last night, as I was thinking about it, I just wrote down a few words that says, scientists and electrical engineers struggled for years trying to figure out how to overcome the resistance as radio waves moved through the air. It took one man to have a revelatory thought that changed everything. Radio waves are unaffected by air resistance. Anyone know who that one man was? Marconi. It's Marconi who invented the radio. Until then, all of the scientists, they were all focused on how do we overcome resistance, air resistance, because surely these radio waves, whatever they are, they didn't understand them. Surely if they come against air resistance, it interrupts or denies or somehow misdirects. But Marconi had a revelatory thought or experience. Air resistance does not affect radio waves. So while they were all going in one direction, he went in another. He just disregarded the idea, the evidence even, and threw it out and realized that none of those things could stop or interfere with or interrupt a radio wave. And in doing so, he was the one, this young man was the one who invented the radio. I like that idea because so often in this world, we spend all of our time trying to figure out, hi Karen, trying to figure out how we can overcome disease, how we can overcome evil, how we can overcome all of the different things that we think or the world thinks is limiting us. And every once in a while, someone has a revelatory experience just like Marconi did and says none of those things are true resistance. They cannot interrupt or change the flow of who I am unless I choose for that to be so. And if I choose for that to be so, it certainly will seem as if all of those things do interrupt me. My body gets sick, my mind becomes frail. I have whatever it is from my past that seems to interrupt my experience of who I am. But the experience of who I am is eternal and has nothing to do with any of those things. In fact, the experience of who I am demonstrates for me that the reality is that none of those things mean anything. They do not change anything, just as Marconi discovered that resistance in the air cannot change the direction of a radio wave. They have nothing to do with each other. In the same way, what you consider to be the outside world or outside thoughts have no thing to do with you and the interruption of the grace that is flowing through you every moment. Is that good news or what? That is great news, because it means we can just disregard it now. Just like those other scientists, they were so focused on a problem that didn't exist. Therefore, they couldn't see that the problem had already been solved. In the same way, if we give up focusing at all on the problem that isn't really there, we can focus on one problem, one solution. The problem is, I think I'm separate from all that is. The solution is, I'm not. I was wrong. And this is the best kind of wrong, isn't it? Because it helps me to realize that I am filled with light now. There's nothing that can change that. Enlightenment, whatever that really means, as we just said a moment ago from that one of the first lines in lesson 188 of A Course in Miracles, enlightenment is not a change. Nothing changes. You see, for so long, we've all been, humanity itself has been focused on, well, we need to change in order to be whole. We need to change our thoughts, our way of being. All of these things have to change before I can be like, and then we point at someone like Yogananda, like him. In fact, we always pick someone who's very different from us, don't we? If they come from a different country, a different religion, a different culture, oh, that's really great. God forbid it's the guy pumping your gas. God forbid it's the lady up here who's doing the dishes, because that comes a little too close. They're just like me. They can't be what enlightenment is. No, it has to be someone like Yogananda. We paint the world's biggest picture of Yogananda in the entire world because it's easier for us to project all of that into someone who is so different rather than someone who is just like me. I am that. That is the only message there is for us to receive. I am that now. It doesn't have anything to do with my thoughts. It doesn't have anything to do with perceived evil or challenges or disease or sickness, pain, and death. Nothing to do with any of that. Enlightenment is not a change. It's the recognition of that which cannot change. So that being said, I have another story for you. I like stories, don't we all? All the great teachers tell parables. Jesus told parables because it's through parables that we can relax. No one's preaching at you. They're just telling you a story. And ever since we were children, we like to hear stories. So here's another little story about the master. In this case, well, I'll just read it. A student came to the master and asked her, "What must I do to become enlightened?" "What did you need to do to be born?" she asked. "Was there any effort or doing on your part?" "No, there was nothing I had to do. It just happened." "But isn't becoming enlightened different? There must be something I have to do, or release perhaps, something that has to change." "The only thing that has to change is your idea that something has to change," she said. Let me read that again. The only thing that has to change is your idea that something has to change. This is because you still believe that something changed when you were created within the mind of God. I'll read that again as well. You still believe that something changed when you were created in the mind of God, and you believe that you've gathered enough evidence to prove your belief. You've looked around the world at your life, at everything that you thought has happened or changed, and you've gathered that evidence. It proves that you were right. The only difference between you and me, she continued, is that I give no value to the so-called evidence of change, but I give total value to the changeless. I give no value to what my body is doing, thinking that it changes who I am. I give no value to what is happening in the world, thinking that it changes who I am. I give total value to the changeless within. So there's nothing I must do to be as you? The student asked. It is an undoing, not a doing. Hold still and allow yourself to be done, which is the same as being undone. Then you will realize that we have always been the same. Until then, you will imagine a difference between the student and the teacher, the man and the woman, and everyone else that you perceive. When you realize that the will of God is forever whole, you'll stop imagining yourself to be outside that will. Once again, when you realize that the will of God is forever whole, you'll stop imagining yourself outside that will. Then you'll be awake. That's what awake is. It's really that simple. I love this. Hold still and allow yourself to be done. Cooked. Well done. Nothing left to wait for. What'd you say?
Baked pot.
You've been baked. You're ready, in other words. There's nothing you need to do to actualize this lesson. All you need to do is to be like Marconi and realize that everyone's looking in the wrong direction. They're trying to solve a problem that isn't there. Once we realize that there's only one problem, and it's an imagined problem, it's not a real problem, because a real problem has an effect. It changes, right? But an imagined problem has no true effect. Nothing has changed. You have not changed. You imagine that you've changed. You gather evidence to support this imagination. Look at my body. Look at things around me. Look at all the different things that have changed. You must be wrong. Okay. But I'm holding to it. Why? Because there's something that comes alive and awake within you when you hear and truly embrace this message. You all know what I'm talking about. You wouldn't be here if you didn't know. There's something that wakes up when you hear a message like this. When you hear the message, as it says in the lesson of A Course in Miracles, eternal holiness abides in me. Eternal holiness. Right now. Enlightenment is not a change. Nothing changes. It's the realization of that which is within you that cannot change. Let everything else that wants to change, but hold true to that reality at the center and at the core of who you really are. Need I say more? I think not. That's everything, isn't it? Hold true to who I am. And I'll add one more thing. Give it away. One of the primary principles or steps in A Course in Miracles or in AA is that you have to give it away. You have to go out and help others who also find themselves in similar situations. And it's the same thing with us. We have to be the source of this. We need to be the vibratory evidence of this. That this is true. Otherwise, they're just words. If we sit up here and just share beautiful words and concept, but it doesn't impact the way that we share this with others, not with words, but with the vibration of our being, it means nothing. But when we go out and love no matter what, and people feel the vibration of that love, how can they not want to be part of it? So maybe that's the only other thing. If there's any doing involved, that would be, it's more of a being. Be that. Be the living, breathing example that this is true, that it negates all the so-called evidence of change and gives evidence to the changeless within you. There you go. Vicky, I am your opening act. So I have set you up perfectly to share whatever it is you feel guided to share now around that holy perfection. Take it away.
All right. Well, I have a lot to say today, but I'll keep it brief. But thank you for this holy perfection so simply. So this is what I felt as you were saying all that. The way I always go to, how does this play out? My father and I are one, but how does that play out practically? And what I'm here with my grandchildren this week. So I'm noticing, because I'm not in my normal everyday routine, I'm noticing that I live in a pause. And when you say be still is good when we're facing something and we want to really be quiet and be receptive and all of that. But the way to be still is to be still all the time. That's really it. And the way that I experience that kind of being still, not all the time, because I'm off the mark a lot of the times, but so what? But when I'm not, I realize I'm pausing. I'm really pausing because one of the games I play is I pretend I'm an alien from another planet here, and I really don't know how things operate. I don't know, but I do have my superpower. See, I've learned this playing with the kids. My superpower of love does know, but I only can activate the superpower when I pause. So, and I'm noticing this with everyone. Because I'm paying attention lately to being receptive. And what is receptive except defenseless? Like that's what being undone is. We're getting rid of all our defenses that want to react and respond and fix and arrange and know things. I'm realizing that if I live in the pause and I just wait, I don't know anything, but I'm receptive and I have love in me, that what wakes up in us for me is delight. It's like I'm finding it's delightful. What wakes up is that sense of freedom that's delightful, just to be with one another. And the way that we give ourselves away most is simply by being with one another with no agenda, being with one another in that presence, in that stillness, in that pause that doesn't have an answer, that just is right here, and in an openness, like it's okay, I don't know anything. I know I'm here with, and being with one another is a way of joining that has more gusto and life in it, because it brings out the natural being with, the natural stillness of the one we are with in that moment, because they don't have anything to react against. They are just being with our defenselessness, our safety, our just being okay with just being ourselves, being that simple presence of waking up to that delight in ourselves. And isn't that what we want to bring to our awareness and our consciousness, that we are one with our creator? And how is that going to show up in a way of life, not just in special situations or challenges, but every day, all day? So I walk through everything like, okay, I'll just be with it, especially things that I'm not accustomed to or don't necessarily like. I like, say, a tidy room. And when you're with kids, you're not often in a tidy room. So it's another way of being. So instead of just going to straighten out a room, I go in and I just wait, and I let the situation show up and show me what to do. And sometimes it shows up and then we all start tidying up together. And other times we just leave it a mess and make more of a mess. Right? So I've left my old ideas and by pausing. So I would say, as a way of life, pausing is a way to drop my ego's control, because the ego jumps in all the time with knowing what to do. So I just wait a minute, just pause, and I enter a room, whether it's with adults or kids, with just a presence of being here. Here I am. I'm here, and not here to get anything, just here to be open and receptive. And the way to give in day-to-day situations is that simple joining, be with in receptivity, to listen and allow what's going to happen to come through. So when I'm with the kids, my gosh, kids are the easiest, because then they have a million games that come up that they want to play, that they're inventing right on the spot. And then all I'm doing is joining with them, giving them the space to be what they are. And then it gives me the space to just naturally be the kindness or the love or the innocence that we naturally are. So your first direction on Be Still, to recognize if we're one with our Creator, with our Father, and that there's no separation in that. I want to let it in, and I don't know how to let it in. That's the biggest help I have. So I just pause, just pause. Elsa's the dog. She wants me to let her in. Just pause with everything. So my translation of Be Still would be to pause and to wake up to the love that we are, to let that delight us. Because when we let it delight us, we bring that sense of wonder and delight here into the awareness of wherever we are and beyond, because delight is an expression of love that communicates. And there are no interfering radio waves or other waves that can stop it. It's like the radio wave. Delight and love are not hindered in any way by the energies of fear and attack. It's a way of bypassing all of those without fighting against it. It's what true nonviolence is, I think. Excuse me, I gotta let the dog out. She knows to ring her bells to go to the bathroom. Hold on.
Well, Vicki, while doing that, I want to talk a little bit about the pause a bit more. There's a story that you may not be aware of how one person pausing saved the whole world. It's an amazing story, and it's a very true story. It happened back I think it was in the early 70s, when a Russian missile officer who was stationed at one of the nuclear missile sites in Russia, they had a protocol, they had a procedure of what to do if they are given a direct order to launch their weapons, they do that. Absolutely, there's no question about it. You're a soldier, you do as you were ordered. And one day, as he and his partner were in the missile silo, that order came: launch your weapons. They had already seen that there were weapons in their mind. They'd seen that there are weapons coming from the US. Nuclear weapons had been launched. So they were instructed immediately, launch your weapons. And one of the officers said, okay, let's do it. We have to do it together. We have to turn these keys together. But the other officer paused and said, hold on, let's wait a moment. And the first officer said, we're not here to wait a moment. We've been given the order, launch the weapons. And the other officer said, no, let's pause. Let's just hold still for a moment. I have a feeling. Seconds later, after they would have launched the weapons, the report came that this was a false alarm. If they had launched their weapons as their computer told them, it likely would have ended civilization, because then, of course, the US would launch, and then more and more and more. The pause that saved the world. Now, are we here to save the world, or are we here to release the world? The pause that you make is the pause that releases the world from that strange idea. It releases you, really, not the world, from the strange, insane idea that you could be separate from all that is. So I love the idea of the pause, because that's where spirit can enter in, like with that Russian soldier. That story was kept secret for decades, and it only came out recently of what happened. But he saved the world by just holding still and pausing. Any final thoughts, Vicki?
Thank you, Brother James. No, but I love that story, and I didn't know it. You probably said it before, but isn't that, Jesus says, don't worry about the past. Why worry about a past when you keep repeating the same problem in the present? So I always take that as, oh, good. That means if the whole problem is separation and I keep repeating it in the present, all I have to deal with is this present moment for the whole sonship, not just for me, what looks like just me. And that gives me great, I don't know, great joy to think, okay, I will just end separation right now because I will rest in that pause, in that stillness, that I am one with my creator. And I'm so excited about that. And that's what each of us can do all day long in our lives. And then it does become our new habit. It becomes easy. That's why it is like riding a bike. It becomes easy to live by grace than live by thinking. The end of thinking and projecting is the end of time as we know it, and the beginning of the era of love. And we are here to bring in the era of love, and we are doing it. And this simple pause to be the love of God in whatever situation we find ourselves is the simplest, for me, way of applying this and living into it and celebrating it every day, very simply, right where we are. Our communication to the whole sonship is not interrupted by the fear of the ego. All we had to do was let it be so for us individually in the moment we're in. Thanks, Brother James. Let it be so.
Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you, Brother James.
Always so wonderful. What a great way to start off our day.
Thank you.
Recognizing the problem has already been solved. There is no resistance in the air to who you are, blocking you, interrupting you in any way. So shine and send forth all of that goodness. And that being said, Scott, I'm going to invite you up to extend the goodness from your unbelievably creative mind and see what comes forth to wrap this message up. So Scott, come on in. Looks like we're getting less and less yellow as we go here. So.
Let us chant our way out of the meeting today. Very simple words from A Course in Miracles, mostly. By grace I live, by grace I release, by grace now I pause and return to peace. By grace I live, by grace I release, by grace now I pause and return to peace. By grace I live, release. By grace I release. By grace now I pause and return to peace. By grace I live, release. Grace I release. By grace now I pause and return to peace. By grace I live. By grace I release. By grace now I pause and return to peace. Amen. Thank you, Brother James.
Thank you, Scott. So, whenever you feel one of those thoughts come into your mind, how do I overcome this? How do I solve that? How do I work through this resistance? Just pause and realize, as Marconi did, there is none. There is no resistance to who I am, to the truth that is forever true. And then just relax into that truth. You see how simple salvation is? So let it be. Let it be. Amen, 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 y punto. Thank you, everyone. Have a blessed
you.
day. We love you.
I love you. See you tomorrow.
Thank you. I love you all.
I love you. Namaste.
Adios.